going to review the basics of lab safety. So we're going to start by kind of going over how this is going to look. The presentation itself is over here on the left, and then the notes are over here on the right. So the notes that you set up in class today, you'll be filling in as you go, and your notes at home should look exactly the same as the notes that I type on the computer. So you'll see it has the main idea right here, and it has notes, and I'm going to add a section for the summary when I get to the end. So right now we're going to get started going over lab safety, and as I add notes over here, you should add them to yours at home. Feel free to pause the video whenever you need to get caught up. I would suggest that you let me finish typing a whole sentence of notes, then pause it and make sure that you copy it all down. That way you're not pausing in the middle of a sentence and you lose track of what's going on. So let's get started with lab safety. We're just going to go over some basics here tonight, and then we'll do a bunch of activities in class about it as well. So the most important rules for lab safety are, so for our main idea, we will say the most important rules, and they are to listen to instructions, ask if you have a question, and no horseplay. Those are really the three biggest rules for lab safety. Listen to the instructions and read the instructions, ask if you have a question, and no goofing around. Right? If you're not able to follow these rules, you're not going to be successful in the lab this year. All right, general safety rules. All right, so in general, we'll have a new main idea usually with every slide, not always. So general safety, we've got a couple rules for that as well that we want to be aware of. All right, so you keep your area neat and clean. All right, so we're going to keep work area clear and clean up after yourself. All right, I've kind of combined those into one line for notes. All right, we want to report injuries or accidents. All right, I don't know why this has an extra line in the middle there. I don't want that. And then we want to know where the safety equipment is. All right, and I just abbreviated equipment. You can write it out. It's up to you. So these are some general safety rules that we need to be able to follow in order to be safe during the lab. Chemical safety has a couple special rules of its own. All right, so for chemical safety, we need to go view line. What? Perfect. All right, so we always need to wear goggles, no food or drink in the lab. That's a rule pretty much always. Point test tubes away from our face, never look directly at it, and we don't mix or taste anything on our own. So goggles and no food or drink. All right. So test tubes away from the face. And we want to use what's called the wafting technique. And we will demonstrate this in class to smell, not small, smell, odors. All right. And then, again, follow the directions for disposal. All right. So those are kind of our key chemical safety rules. Goggles, no food or drink, test tubes away from the face, use the wafting technique for odors, and we're following directions for disposal. Some things can go down the drain, some things will go in the trash, others we have to dispose of specially. Fire safety. We will be using fire at a couple points this year in different labs, so we need to make sure that we know how to use it safely. So fire safety. All right, we never leave fire unattended. Right? Always turn it off when you're done with it. All right. Don't pick up heated items using bare hands. All right. So use equipment to handle hot items. All right. And we want to push up sleeves and pull back hair. All right. It would be really bad if you ended up like this guy, right, lit on fire. This guy with his stuff on fire. And we always want to make sure that we are being as safe as possible. A couple other things to point out: glass safety. At some point in the year, someone will break a piece of glass. It's going to happen. It happens every year. It's not a huge deal as long as we respond to it safely. All right. So with sharp things, all right, we want to handle sharp objects. Objects by the handle. Get it? Handle them by the handle. Alright, so we want to make sure we look before we move with them. No running. Alright, that's pretty straightforward. We don't use broken or chipped glass. Alright, broken is pretty straightforward, but even if it's just got a little chip in it, if we were to heat that up, that chip might become a big crack and it might break on us. So chipped glassware, we don't use that either. Right? And tell a teacher if you break glass. All right? You may clean it up, I may clean it up. It will kind of depend on the situation. We never touch broken glass with our hands. If we're going to pick it up, we'll use a broom or something like that to pick it up. Alright, and then at the end of the lab, we've got one last thing to talk about. This is our last slide, so too far. End of the lab. Alright, so when we finish our lab, we make sure that we clean up all materials. Clean up our table. That may mean wiping it down with a wet paper towel. It may mean just picking up the materials that we've used. It will depend on the lab. And the last thing we always do is wash your hands. Alright, depending on what we've used, there's definitely going to be stuff that you don't want on your hands after this lab. Alright, so that is the end of our notes. This video, this TeacherTube video, is linked and embedded on our page, so feel free to watch that as well. It's kind of a funny little lab safety wrap. On the bottom of your notes, the thing you should be doing now is writing a 2 to 3 sentence summary of the material here. So kind of, we've talked about a lot of key safety rules. You're not going to rewrite every single lab safety rule, but just some big general guidelines summarizing what we've talked about today. We'll go over that summary in class tomorrow, but I do want you to give it a try tonight and make sure that you have written a 2 to 3 sentence summary of your notes. Great job taking your first notes on the computer. We'll go over them in class tomorrow. Make sure that your notes totally match the notes over here, and I will see you guys in class on Monday or Tuesday, depending on when you're taking these.